Shalom, dear friends, and welcome to our Israel Vision studios in the picturesque Mount Zion Hotel overlooking the walls of Jerusalem. In today's People Who Make a Difference segment, we're very happy to introduce you to Uri Schwartz, who is the director of the Department of Public Relations at the Sharezadec Medical Center in Jerusalem. Uri is a very interesting person who has been the chief rabbi of the Jewish communities of Finland and, as a rabbi, the director of youth and education in Auckland, New Zealand, as well as a youth leader in various Israeli Jewish youth movements. He's the author of the highly acclaimed PowerPoint presentation, We Must Be Prepared, that has been seen by thousands of people all over the world. We Must Be Prepared shows how the Sharezadec Hospital has become a leader for helping people who have become potential victims of weapons of mass destruction, including chemical and biological. Uri, it's a very special honor to have you with us today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
And how did you get involved in writing this We Must Be Prepared PowerPoint presentation?
Look, when you work at a hospital in Jerusalem, you are, whether you like it or not, being confronted with terrorism as a part of life. You don't only read about it in the papers, you don't see it in the television, but you feel it really firsthand. Sharezadec Medical Center has really been the hospital in the center of Jerusalem who during the big terror attacks have received the majority of the terror victims. And I felt that it was important to tell the story, to show the world the story that you normally do not see on public television. I was going to a meeting in the States and on my laptop playing en route over the Atlantic and tried to find something clever to say at the meeting. And it was so well received that we decided that we have a good product here and adapted it afterwards for various needs.
Now, when you say weapons of mass destruction, you mean the hospital is prepared for a nuclear attack, chemical, biological?
The hospital, Sharezadec Medical Center, is the only hospital in Jerusalem who is on 24-hour alert for chemical and biological warfare. We have the largest facility in Israel in terms of detoxification. And I was told by an official from the United Nations that if it's the biggest in Israel, it must be the biggest in the world because there's nobody else in the world that's as prepared as we are. So we are always prepared. We are ready for even the worst to happen. And we do know for a fact that terrorists would very much like to use these kinds of weapons. And we shouldn't forget that until a few years ago, Iraq was certainly a threat to Israel and to Jerusalem in terms of chemical and biological weapons.
So are you going to use this as a tool to teach other hospitals how to get prepared?
We feel that it's very important to share our experience, and we have hooked up with hospitals overseas as well. And we have got our physicians and our professionals who are literally traveling around the world and trying to share the expertise and knowledge that we have built up based on our experience. It's in all fields of preparation for mass casualty. We have, for instance, our nurses will explain about the nurses' angle, our social workers about our social workers' angle, etc., etc. So we really feel it's important to get the word out there. We also feel that we should help terror victims from other countries. And we have had, for instance, terror victims from the terrible tragic at the school in Beslan in Russia, where hundreds of children were murdered and injured. We have had a couple of those children over by us and treated them for some of the things that we have unfortunately developed expertise in.
I know that Israel was a leader in the world in receiving children from the Chernobyl disaster and helping with them through the radiation poisoning that they received. Tell us more about the trauma center in Sharezadec. I know that Dr. David Applebaum, who is very well known as a teacher of trauma care, unfortunately he was killed in a terror bombing himself with his daughter the day before she was getting married, but it's so sad story. But tell us what happened, how Sharezadec is in that field.
It has been a must for a modern hospital in the center of Jerusalem really to upgrade its emergency facilities. And Dr. David Applebaum, of loving memory, he was really the founder of emergency medicine in Israel. He brought what we know today as emergency medicine to Israel. And most people in this country who knows anything about emergency medicine, they have to thank the late Dr. David Applebaum for that. And as you mentioned, on the 9th of September 2003, on that terrible Tuesday night, he was killed when a bomb blew off at the Emek Rephaim Street, not far from where we are sitting here at the moment, as a matter of fact. It was the days before his daughter's wedding. He had just arrived the same morning from New York, where he had taught the message of preparedness for mass casualty events. And he ended his lecture in New York by saying, in Jerusalem it's for real. And less than 24 hours later, he was actually killed in Jerusalem. So it was certainly for real. And his concept of emergency medicine, of first-class trauma care, is what we today are promoting at Sharezadec. And we have just opened a completely new facility, the Weinstock Department of Emergency Medicine, where everyone really can get, if he needs it, the first-class emergency treatment on a level that is really on the top. So we had the pleasure of last year of being together with some of the TV stars from the ER TV series. Yes. And when they saw what we are doing at Sharezadec, they just couldn't believe it, that this is reality. For them it's a play, for them it's acting, but they saw that this is reality. This is what we are doing every day.
Now, the hospital is, at the doors of the hospital, politics end, and you also treat Arab children as well, and Palestinian children as well as Jewish Israeli children, and international, I'm sure, and tourists and whoever, and army. Tell us about that.
Look, it's actually in the name of the hospital. Maybe we should mention that the very difficult name of the hospital, Sharezadec, actually is taken from the Bible. It's taken from the book of Psalms, chapter 118. Pitruli Sharezadec, you should open for me the gates of righteousness. So we actually call the gates of righteousness. And that puts the whole hospital philosophy into 2 words, basically, into a nutshell. Because we treat everybody gets the same care. We don't make any difference to any patient. And it can come to an absurd that we have a terror victim lying next to the terrorist in the emergency room sometimes, because the moment even the terrorist enters the gates of righteousness, we don't make any distinction between him and anybody else. What's going to happen to him afterwards is none of our business. It's not the problem of the hospital. But in terms of treatment, he will be treated and be well enough to be taken care of by the security forces. So it's very important for us. That's why we also have on staff Palestinian physicians, Arab physicians, etc., because medicine can only function that way. If we take politics into medicine, then there's really no great hope for the future. We have on our staff physicians whose children have been killed. We have, for instance, a pediatrician whose child was killed in a terror attack, and he's every day treating Palestinian children, and he's doing it the same as a physician.
Dr. Picard.
Dr. Picard,
yes,
exactly.
We interviewed him with a tremendously touching story of how his son was killed in a terror attack, and after the 7 days of mourning, he came back to the hospital, and the next day, first child he had to treat was a Palestinian child.
Exactly.
I asked him, how did he manage that? And his answer, I remember, was so touching. He said, my son of blessed memory would have wanted me to do that.
Correct. And I think that's what it all is about. And this is something that's very hard for us to understand, how you can just go on that way. But this is what medicine is all about. And this is the mandate that we have. So we treat everybody equally. Everybody gets the first-class care, really a top-notch care, and that's what we're here for.
Now, I remember being in your office and you showing me the pieces of shrapnel that have been taken out of different victims that have come into the hospital. Now, thank God there's been a slight reduction of terror bombings. Do you think why is that happening?
Look, in order to live, as you get in my accent, I'm not Israeli, and
you have a lovely Danish accent.
I have a lovely Danish accent, and it's when I decided to move from Denmark to Israel, and I decided that this is the place I want to live. I also have to think about the future. In order to live in this country, you have to be optimistic. And you have to believe that the day tomorrow will be a much better day. And I think that even though the things here have looked pretty terrible over the years, you have to be optimistic that there will be a better day tomorrow, that the sun will again shine tomorrow and maybe in a better way than it did yesterday. And I think that that's what gives us the power here to continue to live. We believe obviously also in the words of the Bible that this is the land for us, and we, in order to survive here, you really have to be optimistic. And I see myself as a very big optimist. You know, the difference between a pessimist and an optimist is not necessarily that the optimist is more often right. It's just much easier for him to get through life. So I'm an optimist.
Now, you're a family man, correct?
Absolutely.
And are your children, what ages are they? Are they getting ready for the army? Or?
Well, I've got 3 children. My oldest daughter, who just got married last month, she just finished 3.5 years in the army. My second daughter, who is 21 years old, she is now on her 3rd year in the army. Both of them are officers, and she might even go on for a longer time, my second daughter. I have a son who is 11, and we hope that before he will reach the age of the army, that we will already have the peace that we all long for.
We won't need it anymore.
We won't need it anymore.
I remember interviewing another man on this program, and he said, we thought that 35 years ago. And well, it's not easy here in living in Israel. And I want to thank you, Uri, for the amazing work that you're doing on a daily basis. Being the man in the position of promoting the work of a very righteous and very holy operation in Israel and Jerusalem called Sharezadec. You know, we are in such a tiny community here. When a bomb goes off, basically you can hear it in Sharezadec.
Absolutely.
So you can almost get ready for the victims when you hear that horrible blast.
You know, we mentioned before Dr. David Applebaum, when he was killed on that September 9th. It was 11:15 at night, and I was lying in my bed. And I said to my wife, that is it, I'm going to the hospital. And that was before opening the news, before hearing the sirens. It was just obvious that this was not fireworks, this was a bomb. And I was already on my way to the hospital when the first sirens of the ambulances came, because it was obvious that something had happened. So you're absolutely right. Jerusalem is a small city. Wherever you are in the city, you can certainly hear it and you can feel it.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for being with us, and our prayers are with you.
Thank you
and
very
your
much.
Team there, your outstanding team of health givers. We're asking that you, as the viewers, will be moved as I have been moved in hearing these stories, and we're asking that you would become involved in helping Sharezadec Hospital. Contact us at israelvision.com, and we will put you in touch with Uri Schwartz, who will send you out information about Sharezadec Hospital, how you can pray for them, how you can know more about what they're doing, and even participate financially, help them do their outstanding work. And so we're closing this part of the program saying, as we do so often, shalom, shalom, which means perfect peace. May God give you in your home with your family perfect peace. Shalom, shalom from Jerusalem. Shalom, this is Dr. J. Rawlings reporting to you for Fact or Fantasy. In today's fantasy, I want to bring up the issue that Palestinians do not encourage children to engage in terror. This is a definite fantasy. And the fact is that most Palestinians who adopt terror in the hope of either ending the occupation or destroying Israel do so because they freely choose murder over any other option. Palestinian terrorists also, in some macabre way, choose to use children to do their dirty work. On March the 15th, 2004, for example, Israeli security forces caught an 11-year-old boy attempting to smuggle a bomb through a roadblock. PLO Tanzim activists in Nablus promised the boy money if he delivered a bag containing a bomb stuffed with bullets to a woman on the other side of the checkpoint. If the boy was stopped and searched, the terrorist who sent him planned to use a cell phone to immediately detonate the 22 pounds of explosives that he was carrying in order to murder the nearby Israeli soldiers as well as the boy himself. But alert Israeli soldiers foiled the plan, and the bomb apparently malfunctioned when the terrorist tried to remotely detonate it. Then, a week later, on March the 24th, 2004, a 14-year-old Palestinian child was found to be carrying explosives while attempting to pass through the Israeli army checkpoint at Hawra at the entrance of the town of Nablus. These were just a couple of examples of the cynical use of children by the Palestinians waging war in Israel. Young Palestinians are routinely indoctrinated and coerced into the cult of martyrdom.
Every Palestinian has been exposed to inhumane propaganda over the past few years, with the primary message being, kill Jews wherever you can. This message is not limited to the realm of the extremists, but rather is open policy. All of this has been orchestrated quite methodically by the Palestinian Authority, who, with malice aforethought and directed from above, have transformed children into political pawns. We must wonder what kind of government calls upon its citizens to become uncompromising killers, while presenting itself to the world as a victim striving only towards peace. This untenable hypocrisy should not be tolerated by enlightened civilization. Yet, this is the reality happening here and now, right under the noses and cameras of the international media, who are trying so valiantly to avoid facing the undeniable and disturbing fact. Irrevocable seeds of hatred have been planted into an entire generation.
How sad. No matter your political leanings, using and abusing children to carry out or assist in armed attacks of any kind is an abomination. We call on the Palestinian leadership to publicly denounce and cease these practices. I hope you'll agree. This is Dr. J. Rawlings reporting to you for Fact or Fantasy.
I'm Meridel Rawlings for this portion of His Still Small Voice, coming to you from our garden in the hills of Benjamin on the outskirts of Jerusalem. I want to talk about how we're created in the image of God for just a few moments. Oh, don't switch off. This is something good. Let's talk about the will. Yes, you were born into your family. No, you didn't choose your parents. No, you didn't choose your DNA. No, there's nothing you can do about the length of your nose or the size of your shoes. But you know what? There is an awful lot that you can do about all the rest. With the giftings that you have and the opportunities afforded you, you will make decisions of how you're going to spend your life. That's your choice. We do have a lot of choices, and we need to realize that these choices separate us from all of creation. They, in fact, make us like the divine because we can choose to a certain degree, yes. The other thing that we've been given is the ability to reproduce ourselves, which is such a blessing. It can be a blessing or it can be a curse, as we've seen through the loss of children and how children are starving, etc. in the earth. But to see a happy family with their little children, there's nothing like it. It is a microcosm of of the heart of God for all of man. He wants to love us. He wants us to romp and play and feel loved and be ecstatic over the essence of life and of being alive. But we have choices, and I want to come back to that. A lot of people blame out of frustration, out of shame, out of losses and disappointments. Instead of finding a creative way to respond, they blame. And the first one they'll blame is usually God, and then the spouse. Well, that's human nature. That's the low part of human nature. But there's a way to get out of it. But I want to talk about our choices. And if you'll permit me, I'd like to read you this small piece by a wonderful writer named Henry Noureddin. Often hell is portrayed as a place of punishment and heaven as a place of reward. But this concept easily leads us to think about God as a policeman who tries to catch us when we make mistakes and send us to prison if the mistakes are big enough. Or he's a Santa Claus who counts up all of our good deeds and puts a reward in our stocking at the end of the year. Well, that's what we do with him in our mind, isn't it? We either believe in him or we just dump him into a refuse pile. However, God is neither a policeman nor Santa Claus. He does not send us to heaven or hell, depending on how often we obey or disobey. Are you surprised at that? God is love and only love. And in him there is no hatred, there is no desire for revenge or pleasure to see us punished. That's good news. He wants to forgive, heal, restore, renew, and show us endless mercy. That's his heart. He wants to see us come home. But just as the father of the prodigal son let his son make his own decision, God gives us the choices to make our own decision at the risk of destroying ourselves. Hell is not God's choice. It's yours. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? If you have questions, meet me online, hisstillsmallvoice.com.